Greetings, brothers and sisters. Interesting developments regarding the so-called Chinese spy balloon. Because, what I saw yesterday in the sky very well could be what they're calling the Chinese spy balloon. And I want to talk about that, my own experience, because we saw something in the sky just randomly. Like I said, didn't really care much about this story more than anything else, right? It was just a passing by story that I see these things, hundreds of these things a day. People said to me stuff, right? It just, it's all kind of monotonous. But the first thing I wanted to say was that I always question the official story, right? The official story is usually been manipulated, even if they're reporting on something real or something happening. What they tell you is usually a lie. Maybe it's 80% truth and 20% lie, or maybe it's whatever it is. And the other thing that is interesting, that it involves China. Now, the most recent thing with China is coronavirus, which is huge, right? So there is this story out there, this unofficial official story, that some Wuhan lab had a biological weapon in it, and it somehow got out, and that's what we now know as COVID or coronavirus. And there are interesting questions about that story, because if that's true, if a Chinese lab did leak COVID intentionally or unintentionally, then why is China still on the map, right? Should there be some sort of repercussions, UN Joint Council, American-led, whatever it is, repercussions against China? Why isn't China facing huge economic sanctions? If you look at something that has been a disaster on a global basis, it would be COVID, right? It's the worst thing that any country has done to the rest of the countries. We're talking about, millions of people dying and suffering, and then all the other things that went along with it. When you have a problem of this nature, you always look for the cause. You always try to eradicate the cause. If you have a health scare, if people in a town are getting sick, right? Let's say one town, people are getting cancer at a much higher rate, and there is a factory nearby. Well, maybe the public officials have been bought off by the factory, and the local doctors, whatever it might be, have been paid off or scared off. But most people kind of understand that the factory, like let's say there's one factory in a small town, and, that's near the reservoir, right? And, people are getting sick in some kind of way that there must be something going on. You would figure it was the factory. They might do everything to, the corporation that owns the factory might do everything to make sure they don't get blamed and avoid lawsuits, whatever it is, right? But you would seek an answer. And if they weren't seeking an answer, then you'd have to believe that people have been compromised, right? And so when the world got sick and we had this disaster where they had to close down the world economy, you would want to know what caused it. And I've said this over and over again. You'd say, well, what happened so we don't make this mistake again? And if it's a biological weapon that's released, then somebody's got to be punished. If somebody, had unsafe practices and a biological weapon was released accidentally, then there would be repercussions. And, people like to blame something on somebody. So they find the root cause. And since they never really looked into this, they said, I don't know, maybe it's bats. There's a pangolin story out there, like ridiculous stuff. Somebody had bat soup in Wuhan, right? They blame China, but not really blame China, right? Because if China's responsible, then they should have something, some real consequences for whatever they did. And if they did accidentally leak this virus, then why isn't everybody outraged at not only China, but the whole process of messing around and doing gain-of-function research, right? Yeah, you guys can't do that anymore. You screwed up. That's your one time. Then this is closed down. Stop messing around. Like, not just China, but everybody. And so what I think it is they're blaming China because whatever reason they are, right? but this is a global. This was some sort of global, something done globally in a conjoint effort that to release a biological weapon. I think they did it intentionally, and everybody's in on it. Like that would be that's my personal explanation, and I don't know. And the same thing, like I had a bunch of people saying this is Project Bluebeam or some other thing, right? This is what it is. And I'm like, you don't know what it is. Like, I don't know what it is. You don't know what it is. Like, it's just, that's one of the problems of the truth community, admitting that, you think you know, but you might not, right? But people in the truth community, oh, no, I know. Yeah, you know, right? But to me, there's a link between them blaming Wuhan on China and then whatever's going on with this balloon. Like maybe they want to create some war with China, and that's already been, pre-constructed. I mean, whatever it is, Jojo Magoo's relationship with China, all of it. So it's just very fishy. And so let's get into the latest news on it. And now they're saying they shot it down, and then I'm going to review what I saw yesterday, and then I have an update video here. So let's get into it. Okay, so YouTube recommended this to me, but this is just one of many reports about this.
I'm Lindsay Davis at ABC News headquarters in New York. We're coming on the air at this hour with breaking news. Just moments ago, the U.S. shot down the suspected Chinese surveillance balloon.
Okay, so they're breaking into regularly scheduled programming to say something happened. So that usually means a big event just happened, right? They're breaking into your whatever you're watching and telling you that they shot this balloon up. They shot this balloon down. Breaking news. And so it was a big story, front page story on all these various publications online and newspaper. This was a major story. So why is it such a major story? Because U.S. just shot something down that they're all claiming is a Chinese weather spy balloon. And so is it an act of war that they're spying? Is it an act of war that we shot it down? I mean, it's like a big deal, right?
Off the coast of the Carolinas, a recovery operation is now underway.
So they shot it down over the ocean, and their reasoning, they're going to say here in a second, is that they didn't want anybody to get hurt, which I'll discuss because that all seemed bogus. Because when I first heard this, I'm like, well, they let it cross the whole country, and then they confirm it here.
There have been calls for the U.S. to take this kind of action since the balloon's discovery was first announced on Thursday. And this morning, when asked if the U.S. would shoot it down, President Biden said, we'll take care of it. Defense officials say the balloon was first spotted in U.S. airspace over Alaska, then seen over Montana on.
So they let it cross the country. That's the official story. That it came in. This is what I said to my wife when I'm like, they let this thing cross the whole country, right? When we heard it was shot down. When they're saying it's shot down over the Atlantic Ocean. They let it cross from one coast to another. And so, it's like somebody robs a bank and they shoot the getaway car after the robbers have gotten away with the money and have abandoned the car, right? If they've already done their damage, they got their spy information. Now, we protect our airspace, and especially coastal airspace. And so, especially with Russia and all the things that are going on. So this giant balloon that you could see with the naked eye, like you could look up at the sky and see it if it was passing over. I mean, this is what they're saying it is. And I don't know, like I said, I think it might be a UFO or something else, right? Whatever. But this, the official story is it's a balloon that you can see with the naked eye. It entered our airspace over Alaska, which is mostly wilderness. Like you have to take planes and boats because there's no roads from city to city. There's just so much wilderness and even in terms of Canada. So they could have shot that thing down somewhere in Alaska, whatever, I mean, and then it entered into Montana, another spacious state. So if they're saying, well, there's all this rural area in America and certainly in Alaska, but then these other states, they let it cross the whole state gathering data. All the states, they let it cross the entire United States, and then waited until it got over the Atlantic, went from the Pacific to the Atlantic, and then they shot it down, right? And the speed in which they're saying it was moving is quite significant because when my wife and I saw the object we saw that, kind of looks at like, from a distance what they're saying this was, it wasn't moving at all. I showed the video already in the introduction. I'm going to show it again in a bit. And you can see that there's a plane, and the plane is moving. When you look up to the sky, you see things are moving. And, some things seem more stationary or moving more slowly, like stars or whatever it is, because of the rotation of the Earth. But, the things that are moving, like something moving this quickly, we would have seen. And so the balloon was not, it was just there. What they're calling the spy balloon, and what we saw was, just there, right? And we're not by the coast. Like we're some distance away from the Atlantic Ocean. And so something that wasn't appear to be moving, and we saw it at 9 a.m., and then they shot this down at 2:39 p.m. So something that it didn't appear to be moving at all. If it was moving, it was incredibly slow, right? It was a stationary object that we saw. Whatever we saw was stationary. At 2:39 p.m., we saw it at almost 10 o'clock, right? So my video was at, 9:49 in the morning, so it was less than 5 hours after we saw it. So it wasn't moving that quickly. Like, it just wasn't. So, that's weird. That part, unless they had some way of speeding it up, like they're saying it's being carried by wind, right? There's no, it doesn't appear they have a way to, I don't know. I don't know how they control the things. It looks like there's some solar panels on it. That's what they're showing for it to collect the data. But I'm very suspicious about this story. Again, usually I just cover things. I got COVID. Actually, there's some comments, some funny comments I want to get to. Hopefully today. There's a COVID comment, that's what I'm saying. But some of the things, most stories I cover don't really affect me. Like, I don't have any personal experience with it. But I happened to see something in the sky yesterday. And now it's more interesting to me because having that experience, I don't believe the official story, right? It's, they're saying this thing zipped across America based in what? Its ability to ride the wind, right? And so, this story just doesn't, it looks kind of fake and bogus.
Wednesday, where a brief aviation ground stop was ordered as defense officials considered shooting down the balloon. They decided to hold off, ultimately citing safety concerns for those on the ground.
Yeah, they don't care about you, right? They let it do its damage.
The balloon continued moving across the country, last seen over the Carolinas. The Chinese claimed that it was primarily a weather balloon that had floated into American airspace.
The Chinese are lying about everything, but this whole thing seems like a lie.
Space by force majeure, or forces beyond their control. U.S. officials repeatedly said, though, that was not true, calling it a high-altitude surveillance balloon. The incident, of course, further sours relations between the world's superpowers. Secretary of State Antony Blinken postponing his trip to China.
Okay, so this is causing an international incident, and now this came out. China claims right to respond further after U.S. shoots down spy balloon, report says. Chinese government said Saturday that President Biden's decision to shoot down the spy balloon that crossed America was an excessive reaction and retains the right to respond further. It was a civilian airship and not a spy device. And the Chinese government is so trustworthy. And so is the American government. So it's also trustworthy, right? And so this is, in a way, an act of war. If they're spying on us, that's an act of war. And a shooting down their spy, this is just a big story. And so, again, is there something else going on? Is the Chinese and the Americans working together on some other, where they're working together against their citizens and America's working together with them against us, right? Or the global citizenship, because this is some sort of, planned event. Or it's something else that they're covering up, like a UFO of some sort or another. So here's my updated version, and I'll show you what our sky looked like again with the so-called spy balloon. But I'm standing in basically the same spot. This is where the plane was before, and now there's another one putting up chemtrails. There's going to be a thing saying underneath about chemtrails, right? A warning or whatever. But these are all the chemtrails that were across the sky. And it looks, it looks bluer than it actually is. The sky is basically clouded over. So we had a morning sky that was completely blue. And I showed you the one chemtrail plane, the plane that was there, right? I'll show you that again in a second here. And then there was a number of planes that came over our sky and blotted it out. And by 5 o'clock, at 10 o'clock in the morning, it was a clear sky. And by the end of the day, a day that we could see this, like I wouldn't have been able to see the object. I wouldn't have been able to see this. See, this is, 10 o'clock in the morning. You see it's a completely blue sky. And you'll see the plane with the chemtrail coming in. So they purposefully blotted out the sky. Now, this happens quite a bit. We don't see blue skies very often anymore because there's these chemtrails, and that's the whole thing. Because, Al Gore admitted that they had a plan to do this for climate change. I mean, he did it in some interview, and he said, he didn't admit that this was happening, but he said that, you can go find that if you want. But it's a big thing, and people were telling me yesterday, my video yesterday, because I mentioned chemtrails, and it wasn't a chemtrail video, but they were saying that they saw a warning or whatever it is, not a warning, but there's that like that qualifying thing that YouTube puts under videos. I don't see them because I don't watch my own videos. But here's the plane where you can see the plane moving here. This, I made this bigger, so this is the zoomed in version. But there's the plane moving, and the plane's moving quite quickly, and the balloon, as we go back to it or whatever it was, it's just stationary. I mean, my wife and I looked at it and we were like, well, that's not moving at all. But by the end of the day, 5 hours later, the sky was completely covered up. They had completely covered up what people could see. And so that's suspicious, right? Because, this is chemtrail. Let me show you the chemtrail stuff here again. So this is the same spot, some hours later. And again, it looks bluer than it is. It was pretty overcast. But the way that it looks after they do chemtrail stuff, right? And then the same spot that they had done chemtrails before, that's the same basic spot with the plane. And there's other, like, you can't really see it here. It doesn't, like, you could see some of the other, there's a line there, the older chemtrail there, and all the rest of this thing, right? And so it's highly suspicious. The story seems really bogus to me. There's explanations just from my own experience. This thing was stationary, and somehow it made it all the way to the ocean within 3 or 4 hours. I mean, what? It's like, how can something that's standing still, or whatever it was, it wasn't moving, and it made it to the Atlantic coast. And again, we're not by the coast, so I don't know. I don't know what to say about this, but we saw something, and we don't believe the official story. And whenever, they used to say, if you see a UFO, it's a weather balloon. So they've already made that connection, right? And I'm not saying it's a UFO. I don't know what it is, but I know I don't believe what they're telling us. Right? So, let's move on to the next thing. Okay, so there's one more thing here. My wife had sent me this. I forgot to put it up here. This is the moment they shot down the so-called Chinese spy balloon. Kaboom, kablowie, kablamo. See, there's not much debris, right? Okay, so I got some Hollywood celebrities dropping like flies type of news, and then other news that's just going to be mixed in here. Everything's sort of, I'm covering both things on both channels. Aliens/science create an entirely new type of ice that neither floats nor sinks and could be a clue to the life beyond Earth. The man-made substance looks more like a liquid than a frozen solid. May offer insight. What, they made a milkshake? Like they made a shake? Like they made a Slurpee? Congratulations, science, you made a Slurpee. And then, what is this lawsuit against CVS and Walmart? Chains targeted after homeopathic product sales. Looking at a cold remedy at your local pharmacy, be careful what you choose. Experts warn that some options on the shelves may be no better than sugar pills. Expert warns, be careful. Experts are warning you that these things might not even work. At least they won't have any side effects. Like it's like some dire, dire warning of homeopathy, right? It's subtle. At least it's going to give you myocarditis. CVS and Walmart are in the midst of a court battle for selling FDA-approved over-the-counter medications alongside homeopathic products, a form of alternative medicine based in diluted ingredients. So homeopathy is the essence of something. Like you find the essence of it. I've found it to work. I've taken it in the past. I haven't been using it just because of, sometimes you just forget about things. But it works on a more spiritual, vibrational. I mean, that's what they say about it. And now they're saying, well, this is just nothing compared to, proven pharmaceutical products.
Mean for long-term effects. So they are very, 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 very safe. They're as safe as any vaccine and maybe safer than many.
These vaccines are very safe, according to this doctor, Ovida Fuller.
So yes, they're safe for getting it. What we do not know is the long-term effects after getting it. But my guess, and I can only guess because nobody's done that science yet.
Nobody can. She's only guessing because they have to give it to you, and then they have to wait a number of years before long-term effects might emerge.
Is that even these vaccines long-term won't cause a problem because they're just the RNA.
In fact, it was the Pfizer.
Boom! It's just the RNA, and it's just no long-term effects. Again, another doctor saying we'd have nothing to worry about.
Vaccine she
I don't have anything to worry about either way.
happily rolled up her sleeve to receive when it was her turn.
We don't want people to get sick. We don't want people to die. And these vaccines do the job.
Boom.
We've also learned this evening that Dr. Ovida Fuller has died. She's the
Wait, what?
internationally renowned virologist from Ann Arbor who was instrumental in securing the emergency use authorizations for the 3 COVID vaccines. Dr. Fuller passed away yesterday morning after a brief illness that was not COVID
Not COVID related. Brief illness. She died suddenly?
related.
In remembrance of Dr. Ovida Fuller. She was a temporary voting member of the committee during the entire course of the coronavirus outbreak through its last meeting. And sadly, she died on November 18th, 2022.
No way. Like, why would that even happen? That's just crazy. I wonder if these things are all related in some weird way.
We'll sincerely miss her contributions to the committee, and our thoughts are.
Yeah, her work is done here. Mass bill, I guess it's Massachusetts, bill allows inmates to swap organs for less prison time. Ethics experts say this is exploitive. And so a new bill proposed in Massachusetts would allow incarcerated individuals the options of donating their organs or bone marrow in exchange for a reduction in their sentences. Well, geez, that's sounds like a good deal. And they won't exploit this. Like, they won't take young, healthy people who are innocent, charge them of a bogus crime, throw them in prison, and let them get a taste of prison life for a couple of weeks, and then come and offer them this for their healthy organs. Like, that would never happen. Like, people would never stoop to that low. To organ harvesting is a major business, right?
Medical staff 36 hours to complete. The first step is to freeze the head and body in order to stop the brain cells from dying. The neck will then be cut and the tubes connecting the key arteries and veins fitted. The next step will be the biggest challenge. Now, this is cutting the spinal cord, and doctors will be using an extremely fine blade made from diamond to minimize the damage here.
Sounds like a good thing. They're now doing head transplants. They're taking your head and replacing it with another head because, why not? Like, why not do that? I guess Michael Jackson had some, that's what when Michael Jackson, they froze his head. Was it Michael Jackson or somebody? They froze his head in one, Disney? I don't know what it is. They froze their body in one cryogenic chamber, and they freeze their heads in another. They don't freeze them together because the skull will crack. So they have to sever the head, and then hopefully they'll be able to reconnect it sometime in the future. and bring these really rich people back to life, right? Imagine Michael Jackson coming back to life long after, like in 100 years or 200 years, when he has no fans and nobody listens to his music anymore. He's just some weird pedo, like walking around, no money, no anything, right? Like, why would you bring him back to life? Okay, so one of my viewers just sent me this. A new study shows that masks don't stop the spread of COVID. Will the mandators apologize? Well, since I couldn't find other news organizations covering this, I bet they don't. Right? A dozen scientists from around the world conducted a massive meta-study of our efforts to fight COVID, as well as similar efforts to fight the flu, and they published the results in the Cochrane database of systemic reviews. So they studied masking, distancing, screening, quarantining, hand washing. And then they said here, wearing masks in the community probably makes little or no difference to the outcome of influenza-like illnesses, COVID-19-like illnesses, compared to not wearing masks. In other words, masks didn't do much of anything. Here's the study, right? This is a scientific study that's now saying masks didn't do anything in terms of, helping prevent COVID. But it'll come back around. We know how this is, right? We know that this isn't over. That this will be, something that they'll roll out masks again for something else. Okay, so the rest of these headlines is either stuff to do with dropping like flies or just regular stuff mixed together here. Priscilla Presley asked fans to ignore the noise amid Lisa Marie Truss drama. Does she have fans? Does Priscilla Presley have fans? And the drama's caused because, you got that divorce money from Elvis, but you want some of that inheritance money, right? And Lisa Marie didn't give you any. Taylor Lautner says being known for taking his shirt off in Twilight led him to struggle with body image. These celebrities are all coming out whining about, what he had body image issues. Flashdance singer Irene Cara's cause of death revealed. The medical examiner's office notes that Cara suffered from arteriosclerotic, meaning cholesterol plaque buildup in the arteries, and hypersensitive cardiovascular disease caused by high blood pressure. So she had cardiac arrest. So her heart stopped, right? And, might be something else that caused that. Hypersensitive heart disease refers to heart conditions caused by high blood pressure. So this is what happens. Could lead to heart failure and ischemic heart disease, heart attack, and sudden cardiac arrest. So she died or stroke and sudden death. So she died by some sort of cardiac arrest. People are zapping their brains at home to improve focus and clear brain fog, but is it safe? At-home brain stimulation is flourishing among a group of enthusiasts who say it gives them a mental edge. The science behind why it may work is still in the early stages. So they have a way of delivering weak electrical currents to the brain through electrodes, and somehow these people are thinking this is going to help them out. Family found dead in Pennsylvania made a joint decision to boop themselves, police say. Nothing more to see here. House Intel Chief Mike Turner criticizes Biden for lacking urgency in handling of Chinese balloon. Of course he did. Armie Hammer says he was abused at 13 in his first interview since Scandal. He said it was at some sort of, it was like some religious camp counselor. And he says that one allegation of where some woman accused him of booping her. He says that it was a joint decision to act out this sort of fantasy. And it's kind of a creepy interview, and he's, not a well person, and neither are the people he was with, because it's Hollywood. Liam Neeson calls Conor McGregor a little leprechaun and bashes UFC. He doesn't like the fact that Conor McGregor is what he considers a bad example of being Irish. Rust armorer Hannah Gutierrez Reed spotted for this first time in a year, and apparently they got her on videotape, and she was wearing a shirt, she was wearing a t-shirt with a skeleton on it. The tasteless choice of apparel featured the symbol of death lounging in a hammock in the desert under the phrase, "made in the shade." Yeah, she's made a lot of bad decisions. There's the "made in the shade." So she turned around, let him take a picture of her. There it is. And so, yeah, she's going to jail because of this photo didn't help at all either. Megan Fox attends Grammys party with broken wrist and concussion. They're dropping like flies. She's got a cast on here, pink cast. She definitely hasn't had a good influence on this guy. Bachelor alum Sarah Heron on haunting reminders of newborn's death. I covered this. Well, that was an unpleasant picture. She and somebody else on Bachelor had a baby and it died suddenly, which we all are aware of. Okay, so that's all really kind of weird and depressing, and there's just so much going on that's twisted, and it's not just like a bummer or bad news, but it's so weird. Everything's so weird out there. It just keeps on getting weirder. There's a deep fake out there of JoJo Magoo. It's something that I couldn't show here on YouTube. It's something only on Twitter. My wife and I watched it. And it's, it's definitely a deep fake. You can tell it's a deep fake if you really look at it. But if you didn't, you would think it's JoJo Magoo. But clearly what he's saying is that a character for his political party and his political platform. But it's, kind of interesting. Anyways, only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely reporting from the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.